All right, welcome back to the Jiu Jitsu Mindset. I'm Pete Deeley. And for those of you who checked out our online course for kids, thank you very much. It's the Jiu Jitsu Mindset Academy. And still, submission coffee remains unclassified as a performance enhancing drug. So go to the jujitsumindset.com and get your subscription there. We'd love to send you some beans to give you that unfair advantage on the mats. The divine smiles on me week in and week out. I get a chance to talk with people that always surprises me how lucky I am that they're willing to spend some time with me. And this week is no different. I'm talking with Professor Scott Burr. So, Professor Scott, I'm so grateful you're taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I'm super psyched to be here.
I like to kind of begin with the question I'm always curious about, which is sort of like a question in a negative. Like if jujitsu hadn't been in your life,
Hmm.
and clearly, you're a man of many talents. You've achievements in a variety of different aspects of professional life that speak to, I think, a person who has a lot of different types of talents. So I'm wondering if you hadn't poured all that energy and dedication, love, time into jujitsu, where would that have flowed? Where would all of that energy have been applied?
Well, I think regardless of where it would have been applied, I think it would have been applied less effectively.
Okay.
And so when we were talking before we started recording about, some of the other books that I've written aside from the jujitsu stuff.
Right.
And there was a novel I wrote about, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago called Bummed Out City. And the main character in that book is a guy who thought he was going to be a big famous writer and didn't turn out to be a big famous writer. And he's, kind of feels sorry for himself, and he kind of takes that out on all the people in his life. And
Right.
when people used to ask me what the book was about, I would tell them it's basically about me if I didn't have jujitsu. And one thing being that obviously the main character of that book doesn't do jujitsu, but the other thing being that I feel like jujitsu is a practice that really requires you to take responsibility for the sort of behavior patterns that are keeping you from achieving your goals, right? It's kind of a form of radical accountability,
Yeah.
right? If you're not getting better, it's your own fault. If you keep having the same thing happen to you on the mat, it's because of
Right.
what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so, as a practice, it 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 familiarizes you with the process of saying, no matter what's going on, what am I doing to contribute to the thing that I don't like happening,
Yes.
and what can I do about it?
Right.
And so I think so when I say no matter what I would have been doing, I think I would have been doing it less effectively. I think I would have probably been blaming a lot of my life and whatever I hadn't achieved, or whatever,
Right.
things that happened. I would have been blaming it on other things rather than trying to look more actively at what role I'm playing
Yeah.
in those things.
Yeah. Over the 125 people or so that I've talked to on the podcast, one of the a theme for me uh, is the notion of honesty, and
Mm,
that when I hear radical accountability and those notions, I think part of my internal dialogue is the notion of honesty, and that jujitsu presents a lack of ambiguity that makes it easier to be honest, because if you're not honest, you're going to get hurt. Like,
mm,
if you're not going to tap, if you're dishonest to the fact that the position is lost, then you will become injured, and your dishonesty will punish you in a way
mhm,
that's like um, easily measured, like
mhm, mhm.
and the degree to which you're willing to be dishonest is the degree to which you'll be hurt.
Mhm.
Like it just seems like, um, so it for me, it gives a real life place to practice. Like it's best not to lie because
Yeah,
there's
right.
consequences, and that. so that anyway, I've just to my own impression of what you're saying, like that's how I've kind of internalized that very idea. Did it call to you? Like, was it immediate that jujitsu was going to be really important to you as you encountered it, or did that unfold over time?
Well, I came into jujitsu from I was originally in a traditional martial art, the kick punch style,
Right.
Korean style, and was always, kind of really liked that style, but also, cared about being a legitimate martial artist who, wasn't just practicing skills that he couldn't employ. And so
Right.
through that kind of got into MMA and got in, had the realization everybody eventually has, where you realize, okay, that there's a difference between kicking and punching in front of a mirror and kicking in front, punching a person.
Right.
And so through that got into jujitsu. And so the point being that I was already kind of in love with the practice of martial arts
Right.
and the process of refining a skill set and being, being in the work every day. That was always a practice that really appealed to me, or that really just sort of worked with my personality or something.
Right.
And so when I found jujitsu, that was my, I connected to it that way, and lucky for me, connected to a martial art where, kind of as deep as you want to go down the rabbit hole with it, it will go that deep with you, right?
Right.
There
Yeah.
are further and further and further levels of depth and nuance that you can always find in a way that you, to some extent, can't really like, it's like throwing a perfect punch and throwing a perfect kick. Eventually, they are pretty perfect, and then you're kind of just doing it ad
Yeah.
nauseum,
Yeah. Right.
right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm being disparaging about that, but there's probably depths of timing nuance that I could still plumb. But yeah, but certainly, jujitsu has never given me a lack of new rabbit holes to sort of explore down, and that's what's kept me in it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. So I think that like the physicality, what I'm, I mean, to paraphrase what I think you just, I mean, the physicality of jiu-jitsu gave a place to go explore more endlessly what is possible in that. But it also sounds like this maybe from, well, I mean, you tell me, maybe from the beginning was also a metaphorical reflection of other rabbit holes of intellectual rabbit holes, of spiritual rabbit holes, of getting deeper, having a deeper relationship to other things. I mean, is that fair to say?
Well, I guess maybe what I'm saying is that I'm happiest when I'm sort of in the process of something that's continuously
Yeah. Okay.
intellectually challenging.
Right.
And
Right.
so, yeah, things that are require similar levels of refinement and exploration and challenging and figuring out. I mean, yeah, I certainly connect to a number. I mean, writing being probably the
Yeah.
other
Yeah. I mean that.
primary
Yeah. Right.
craft that requires a similar level of sort of constantly every day you're trying to get a little bit better, and the breakthroughs and the insights are rare, but they
Yes.
are, they keep you coming back. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I connected to it in the way that I personally connect to the things that I connect to.
Yeah. Right. Would because you were already deep into the martial arts, was the acquisition of was the beginning of learning jujitsu very natural and spoke to your physical, your proprioception, like really obviously, or did it take a long time to feel like you were getting it? And in contrast, right, I come to jujitsu at age 50, and I begin my journey with a set of tools that are pretty banged up compared to if I had found them, right? I mean, I'm not, I was uh, which was, I think, a big blessing for me because there was never any room to have anything but humility because I was, I came with this body that wasn't terribly well suited to it. So my learning curve is extraordinarily slow and arduous and all that. But as a young person and someone who was already used to combat type sports, did it go easy in the beginning, or like were you good at it out of the gate, or did it take time to?
No, I mean, I don't think that I think I realized at a certain point that I'm not the most physically talented person. I mean, I'm not physically untalented, but I think I'm probably maybe, I don't know, higher end of the middle of the pack,
Right.
maybe.
Okay.
And so, but what I am willing to do is keep showing up.
Right.
So I really put in a volume of training in a
Mm,
short period of time that I think got me, um, I don't know. I guess I always, whether this is true or not, I approached this and other things where with the mentality of that if I'm half as talented, then I have to work twice as hard, and if
right. Yeah.
if I'm more than half as talented, then working twice as hard still helps.
Yeah. Right.
So I also have I have a weird thing where it's like I'm really hesitant to commit to actions until I have a lot of certainty about what the purpose or the context or the outcome is going to be. So I think for a lot of things, jujitsu in particular, but there have been other things like this. Judo was like this, where it's like I spend kind of the first phase of it really trying to just get oriented in like what are the concerns, what are the ideas, what are the landmarks. And during that period, I'm not having a ton of success unless you very clearly define like, okay, we're going to play a game where the game is you don't open your guard and this other guy tries to pass your guard. If you put me in that context where the parameters are very clearly defined,
Right.
whatever, I can do well in those limited games. But otherwise, if I'm kind of trying to figure out my own path through the thing, I really like to have a lot more sort of overview understanding of what the thing is before I start making decisions within it. But then once I sort of feel like I have that overview, then things start to click very quickly.
Okay.
Right? I remember like there was like a month where I went from like not really submitting anybody to like I was a white belt, I rolled with this one blue belt, and I caught him in like four weird arm bars quickly,
Okay.
like boom, boom, boom.
Right.
And he was like, he kind of went like, wait, can you do that? Like, and I kind of went like, well, if the idea is that I'm supposed to get your arm away from your body and my hips in between and do this, then
Yeah.
those all work, right?
Right.
I mean, if this is the premise, then this is allowed and this worked. So that's the thing, right? And so there were definite turning point moments within that where it was like, but I needed to know what my condition. If A and B and C, then D, right?
Right.
I
Right.
needed to kind of get those laid out in my head. And so once I did, then it was a little off to the races.
Is judo sequence before jujitsu in your training? Were you did you,
No, no, I was a black belt in jujitsu, and I realized that I was much more comfortable fighting on the ground than I was getting to the ground.
right, right.
I mean, I didn't have zero takedowns, right? I had like trained with the local high school wrestling team. I
Hmm.
didn't wrestle in high school, but I went back and trained with those guys, and then had done stuff in MMA training, takedowns
Sure.
and stuff like that. But I really realized I was like I'm a black belt on the ground, but I'm maybe like a blue belt getting to the ground, and that's a really dumb strategy. Like I need to be a black belt at getting to the ground if my entire strategy is take you to the ground and beat you on the ground.
Right, right.
So.
That notion of like figuring out where to anchor your um, practice, right? You're a white belt and you realize, okay, these are the principles of the thing, and then they work, so I can trust the principles, and then you're figuring out how to apply them. I mean, that seems like a pretty
mm.
sophisticated understanding of jujitsu right out of the gate. I mean, did someone teach that to you, or was that just natural to how you approach learning? Like, don't teach me a principle without telling me why it's important, and that just was how you approached it, or was it the context of how you were being taught that gave you that?
No, I mean I think it's how I organize information in my brain. If I don't
Okay.
if I don't understand the sort of like the principle that the technique serves or functions within, like I'm constantly trying to like I need a backstop to check propositions against.
Okay.
It's like, okay, I'm gonna try this. I think if I'm in this position, I could do this pass.
Right.
And you go, okay, we'll run it against some conditions that are true. Well, if the guy can do A, if he can do B, he can do C, then I can't pass.
Right.
So am I doing things to account for A, B, and C? And I'm not saying that my thinking was this clear about it at white belt, but it was, for me, the process has been
Yeah.
starting to sketch in what those things are, and then through the process of training, refine those understandings and those conditions, and then more perfectly apply the techniques that meet those conditions, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. I guess, and part of why I react that way is that, I'm a beginner, right? I'm in like year six and it's only beginning to, uh, what you just said is only starting to become clear. Like if I can sort of understand how these principles that of base and connection and all, pick the really um, what they feel like, what they really are, then the techniques are just manifestations of the principle. So think about how you're understanding the principle, meaning my own internal understanding of what I'm doing,
Hmm.
um, and how little time I have spent in these 6 years doing that. I talked to Clay Cox just not so long ago. He's like, I call that white belt on white belt crime. And I'm still spazzy in that regard. Like I'm still trying to do a technique often rather than I'm trying to apply a principle. So,
Uh-huh.
I know um, that if I slowed down my own experience and just started to more methodically think about, well, how does this movement connect with this principle? I would get, so much better than, I spend time doing what I'm doing. So it's interesting to me to that early, you were able to kind of develop. I think it's the beginning of mastery if you're starting to, okay, these movements are going to achieve these outcomes, not from a technique perspective, but because, okay, the principle is separate the arm from the shoulder, get my hips underneath, so on and so forth.
Well, and I also think I think it's in some ways like a defense mechanism to feeling overwhelmed. It's like, how do I need to, I walked into jujitsu, it's a massive, sprawling body of information with people.
Yeah.
This guy says to always do this guy says never do that.
Right.
Who do I listen to? Who's my true north? What
Mm.
guiding principles do I use to parse all of this stuff
Yeah.
that if I try to get my arms around it, it's just going to bury me.
Right.
So I need to know what I can pay attention to and what I can ignore, at least in terms of composing a practice for the next 6 months.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Okay, I'm going to ignore all this stuff. I'm going to just focus on this for 6 months. And then in
Yeah.
6 months, I'll reevaluate and see if I need to add in other things. But like, I think for me, yeah, realistically, it was a necessary kind of process of trying to get oriented
Yeah.
in a big country.
Without a doubt. So, as you get to bring those to roles or to fights, if like I ask your immediate reaction to the question, what's your most memorable fight or what's your most memorable role, like without thinking about it, is there one that just, oh yeah, it's this is the one.
They're all horrible. I mean, they're not memorable for good reasons. They're memorable because they're traumatic.
Yeah,
Um,
indeed.
you know, like, I like fought, I did like amateur MMA starting out, and I like the things that happened in some of those fights, the the things that I got beat with, the mental aspects of it that became, huge impediments to success. I mean, they're all really, somebody once said, learning lessons in public is painful, but the lessons stick. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
it was,
interesting. Yeah,
it was
right, right.
all, they were valuable experiences, but they weren't exactly enjoyable experiences.
Hmm.
They were memorable, but I just remember driving with my couple of training partners to Upper Michigan in a snowstorm for it was like a 6 hour drive or something to
Right.
fight in an event, and I got guillotined in the first 45 seconds, and it was just awful. And we drove home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was garbage. I mean, so like those things, I mean, they're memorable, but they're memorable in part because there's a lot to dissect there. It's like, okay, why did I, if I did I freeze up in that moment? And did I tap because the guillotine was really bad, or did I tap because I mean, like for example, that particular fight, I remember realizing that I never got guillotined in the room I was training in because I was tough,
Right.
and I was tougher than anybody in that room believed in their guillotine. My tough was bigger than their belief.
Right. Right.
And so when they didn't tap me with a guillotine in 10 seconds,
Right.
they would adjust. And this guy didn't adjust.
Yeah.
And so there was a huge blind spot in my defense and in my understanding of how people could apply a threat, because I had a very limited body of training partners and all their
Right.
behavior was fairly consistent. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, it was kind of an insight into this principle or this kind of idea that a lot of times, and this comes up in different ways, but a lot of times we do stuff and it works against 100% of the people we do it against,
Right. Right.
and we confuse that with it working against 100% of people
Yeah. Yeah.
without ever really thinking about it. We just go, well, it always works. It's like, well,
Yeah.
it always works against those guys.
Right.
Have you tried that against everybody?
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's funny because as I've got a chance to talk to amazing, folks like yourself, sometimes, they've said, oh, well, as I come through town, maybe we'll get a chance to spend some time on the mats. And I'm very hyper aware of how narrow my exposure is to other, like my training room is a group of people who I like very much, and that's who I train with. And on occasion, I do some very small local tournament, and that's my biggest chance to really see what it's like to go roll. But I don't have like that really broad exposure to that. And let me put the question to you slightly differently. One of the people who's become a great friend of mine that I had a conversation with on this podcast, Professor Jason Hawkins. He wrote a book called Light on the Gentle Art, and we were talking about memorable roles. And he said, well, one thing I can tell you is that the roles that taught me the most was when the person was just effortlessly moving me around. It was never a role where I was overwhelmed with the technique, but, it was this um, effortlessness of them employing the technique that I learned the most. And
Mm.
having had exposure to, so many of the great jujitsu people of our time, do you have a role that comes as like, oh, I learned the most in this particular role? Does anything come to mind? I mean, I'm sure there are people that come to mind, and maybe there's an example of like rolling with someone who is important along the way.
Well, I mean, so okay, let me take that in two parts because there were kind of two parts to it, right?
Hmm.
Part number one is I feel kind of the opposite
Okay.
of so the statement about I learned the most in the roles where guys are just gently handling me. I was always the most curious about like in some ways, and this is going to lead into a sort of a political statement that I don't really want to make, but I mean, like jujitsu politics,
Yeah, yeah.
but I was never all that interested in competition jujitsu because I came into jujitsu from MMA, and I felt like I really, when I got into MMA from a traditional martial art, I felt like this is the real world. This is the big rule, the
Right, right.
big world, right?
Yeah,
You've been doing martial arts inside an ecosystem where everybody is doing your martial art against you. You know, we're all kicking and punching the same way. We're all playing
right,
by the same rules.
right,
And when you go into MMA and nobody cares and they're going to play by just whatever works against you,
right,
that's the real stress test. You
right,
know, I don't, and I when I went back sort of into focusing on just jujitsu,
right,
I never really lost that view that like I want to study jujitsu as it applies in, you know, what we're going to call the big world. Now,
right.
obviously, MMA is a sport, and we can talk about all those different things. But
Sure.
I was always much more interested in like I remember one time I was like a purple belt, and this big like local farm boy came in,
Right,
and he was like 240 and super strong, and that guy, even though he didn't know any jujitsu, what he could do is
right,
like, if I hold you like this, can you stand up? If I hold your leg, can you get it back? If I hold onto your head, I'm supposed to be able to keep it. But if
right.
you push on me really, like, so solving the problems that he presented, knowing
Right.
no jujitsu,
Yeah.
was always much more interesting to me because, among other things, like this is supposed to be a self-defense art. So he's much more like the guy I'm theoretically going to end up in a fight with on the street.
Right.
And I said, okay, once I'm an expert in what he's going to do to me, then I'll deal with, you know, what my jujitsu buddies are going to do in our little game.
Right.
So I was always like, I think I learned the most from the strong idiots because
That's interesting.
your strong idiot stuff should not work. And
Right.
if it
Right.
works, I'm doing something wrong. You're going to show me the flaws because jujitsu guys, like I used to say, like in some ways, blue belts are, when you're a blue belts are easier to roll with than white belts because blue belts
Yeah.
act like jujitsu guys.
Yeah.
So
Right.
all you
Right.
have
Yeah.
to do is
Yeah.
beat their guard pass. You don't have to beat them standing up and trying to throw you around and all this stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Good
So,
point.
but if my job is to control a guy, not just stop one move he's trying to do, that's a
Right.
much higher burden. And
Hmm.
so I also felt like, look, if I can control a guy who's 240 and super strong so that he can't move or be effective at any pushes and pulls, well,
Right.
then in order to do a move, my
Yes.
jujitsu buddy has to be able to push and pull and create the angle for advantage. So if I'm stopping the big strong guy, I'm
Yeah.
also kind of stopping this subset group of movements. If
Right.
I'm
Right.
stopping every movement, everything is umbrellaed under that.
Yeah.
So I was always much more interested, even though it's not as much fun and you have to kind of treat it like a fight
Yeah.
because you can't trust that those guys are going to be safe.
Right.
Those to me were always the most informative rules. And if you beat me with some spinning upside down move,
Right. Right.
I go, okay. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I don't care enough about that loss
Yeah.
to go and learn that game to be a specialist in beating that game.
Right.
That's not anybody who loves that, great, love
No.
it.
No. I totally understand.
Personally,
Yeah.
it's not my interest.
Right.
So that's kind of answer number one. So rather than the super smooth, amazing jujitsu guys, who's the big strong smasher guy who,
Yeah.
you know, like Hoist faced in the first UFCs, right?
Right. Right.
The way I want to judge my judo or jujitsu is how do I deal with those guys? How effectively am I with those guys?
Right.
And then the second part of that is, you know, the time I got to spend. Obviously, Hixson is, you know, physically he's dealing with a lot of issues
Sure.
right now, and his ability to get on the mat and move the way he used to move is, you know,
Right.
way down. But when I first started really spending a lot of time with him, he was still in a place where he could, you know, he could kind of do everything.
Right.
He just seemed like he just really paid for it. The recovery was long.
Right.
But I got the chance to be on the mat with him, and not sparring, but you know, okay, put me in this position. Okay, do whatever you want. You can get up. And the way he would solve problems, and the way he would, the sort of almost unorthodox ways that he would, it was like being exposed to an entirely different sort of set of, you know, he was looking at the situation in a way that was entirely foreign to the
Right.
way I was looking at the situation. And he was looking at conditions that I was only vaguely aware of.
Okay.
And he was making decisions based on input data that I was only vaguely aware of. And so the process of every time getting to spend time with him like that, trying to see a little bit more clearly, wait, how are you judging this situation? Why are you making the decisions you're making? What are you looking at? What made you do that?
Right.
And getting to start to try to, input that code and wash out my old code,
Yes.
that was an incredibly informative process.
Right.
Yeah, I learned a ton that way.
Yeah, without a doubt. Was it uh was it obvious to kind of to you? I mean, in terms of how to wash out your old, I mean, did you want to hold on to what felt like this and see, oh, maybe not, maybe next time it will be different, or was it just like, no, no, like this is immediately you knew, okay,
No,
I gotta reacquire
no,
everything.
I had seen it. Well, okay. So two parts to this answer.
Sure.
I had seen enough guys try to like because people hang on to, okay, I walked into Hixson's room with a first degree black belt and I was effective at what I did.
Right.
But what I did wasn't what he was doing.
Oh,
And I
okay.
said, if I'm afraid of losing this effectiveness that I've tried so hard to gain,
Right.
then I'm gonna say, Hixson, please teach me, but I'm only gonna take
Yes.
whatever pieces of information you give me that will fit inside this thing.
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
frankly, this thing is pretty much complete as it is.
Right,
It's
right.
just that it in itself, it's like my Honda Element isn't gonna drive as fast as an F1 racer.
Right, right,
What
right.
it is not gonna take me as far.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to just take everything I do, set it aside,
Right.
and say, just show me what you do.
Yeah.
And and really approach the thing as no preconceptions
Yeah.
about. Don't try to reconcile what he does with what I do.
Right.
Don't try to reconcile what he's saying with what I do.
Right.
And then because when you do this, you start to carve out pieces of the information you're being given.
Right.
And by the end, I was like, I would say like the worst thing that could happen would be go train with Hixson, go back home, go back to train with Hixson in a couple months, and still be doing the same thing I was
Yes.
doing
Right.
before I trained
Right.
with them the first time.
Yeah.
Like I should be radically different.
Yeah.
I should be going home to go, okay, I have this whole new operating system. Let's see how it works.
Right.
And then, of course, I can always realize later then, oh, wait, these two things do reconcile. These are parts of the same idea. But if I don't throw out the first thing first, I'm
Yeah.
never going to learn about the new thing enough to actually have any ability to compare them or parse them or integrate them.
Right.
Now, that being said, I recognize that what I'm saying sounds like I'm saying what you said, which was, oh, I got to throw out everything I knew. And that's not exactly how I felt about it. I felt like I had, and I tell this to people a lot because I'm in a lot of rooms with people who, I've been with Hixson, but it's their first or second time with him or something.
Sure.
And they go,
Sure.
oh my God, I got to throw out everything I know. I feel like a white belt. I wasted all this time. And I go, you don't realize how the entire body of experience that you have and the way you understand jiu-jitsu now, that gives you the ability to
Yes. Right.
start to have the conversation
Yeah.
that you want to have. So this is not about throwing out what you had and starting over from scratch. This is about the process of evolving what you do know.
Right.
But in order to evolve what you do know, you have to really embrace the new thing and try to understand it fully without fear of losing something you had.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to paraphrase kind of what I'm here, I mean, you and other people come with a pretty well-developed vocabulary. I mean, there's of movement, of understanding, and then just like, in terms of language, I mean, pick your metaphor of choice. I mean, Shakespeare versus, whatever else. I mean, there are people who just elevate everything, and but you have to have a vocabulary to begin to understand what you're hearing. And so you
Yeah.
walked in, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, and more what I was thinking. Like, well, but can I ask how old you were when that first experience was? I'm curious, like what age were you when you first encounter Hixson?
So I did a 2-day seminar with him in 2013. So I was 31, but then I didn't start training with him regularly until 2017. So I had just turned Actually, I really connected with him at the seminar in Albany in 2017, which was 2 days before my 35th birthday.
Okay.
And so that was the month I got my black belt in judo. And so 2 months later, 3 months later, I went to California to train with him for the first time, like
Okay.
privates. And so I was 35. I was a black belt in this traditional style. I was a first degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, and I was a first degree black belt in judo.
Right.
And what I have said to people is because I had that body of knowledge,
Right.
I was able to start to have the conversation that he was having. I
Yes.
had
Yes.
enough of a from, oh, okay, right, that thing, that thing from judo where it's all about feeling energy, that's what we're doing.
Right.
That thing from, but it was like I had completed all the prerequisites to be able to
Yes.
start
Yeah.
to be in that room and have that conversation is how I felt about it.
Yeah. That's just amazing. Um, did it matter do you think that you were in your mid 30s when that started, or was there a personal maturity that fits into that, or was it just the physical accumulation of that body of knowledge? I'm curious what role, because yeah, you want to keep your cup full of whatever from that, but you got to empty it too, right? I mean, you got to have that beginner's mind that you're describing.
Yeah.
And did it help not being 24 to be 35? I mean, or did it not matter? I'm just
Well,
curious.
I don't know that I don't know that the age itself had as much to do it, but I do know that it was at a time in my life when I was so and if you read or listened to the introduction to Worth Defending, I sort of talk about this a little bit.
Right.
I was so sick of the sound of my own voice, and I was so sick of I felt like the conceptual framework I had of jujitsu was complete. And I don't know how to put this. Like I had an answer for everything that I was encountering and that I was being asked by my students. And the answers were internally coherent, consistent, and effective. And I knew that there was more to it,
Hmm.
but I was not, it was a really weird thing where it was like I usually in jujitsu, there's more to it because you're not succeeding.
Right. Right. Yes.
And I knew there was more to it because I knew there was more to it.
Right.
Like I was succeeding, I was efficient. I mean, really, like I really felt like my jujitsu was like I had a lot of people telling me like, dude, your jujitsu's like
Right.
whatever,
Right. Yeah.
you do things differently than other people, and it's really effective. And when I do it like that, I beat people that I shouldn't be beating. Blah 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 blah. Right? Not to toot my own horn, but it was
Right. I
there was nothing
totally get
wrong
it.
with what I was doing.
Right.
But I knew I was so bored
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and I knew there was something more. But I realized that my like the mechanism by which I found flaws, I don't know, there's a bigger answer here, but it's like I had used logic, I had used my brain to get me to this point, and I knew there was something else, but my logical brain couldn't imagine it because it didn't operate inside the realm of logic. I didn't know that that was the problem.
Right. Right.
But that was the problem. So it was like the thing that had gotten me to here literally didn't have the ability to go farther.
Yeah.
I wanted to go farther, but this thing kept running up against its own wall.
Right.
And so when I went and started training with Hixson, and it became less about like the math and architecture
Hmm.
and more about sensitivity,
Right.
that's a non-intellectual
Right.
thing. And I didn't have it within me to go like, no, you need to look in an entirely different part of your operating system.
Right.
Because I was like, no, the brain is the brain runs the body.
Yeah.
If the brain understands and the body executes, then you succeed. Boom, that's it. And it was like, no, there's this whole other
Yeah.
way of knowing and responding and sensing and being that you aren't even beginning to operate inside of.
Right.
And that once your jujitsu starts to live in that place and not in this intellectual place, that's where the depth and the depth and the
Yeah.
depth
Yeah.
come in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, that to like when I hear the term invisible jujitsu, obviously never having had the chance to train, with Hicks, but what I like in his online academy or whatnot, when I hear that term, I think, and I hear you talk, like needing to have somebody reveal something that you can't see is sort of how I'm hearing that is that it was there. Some internal part of you recognized that I'm I'm working within a certain set of boundaries, but those are just boundaries. There's something else past them. But then how do you get somebody to show you that land if you needed somebody who's been there in a sense, right? I mean, the guide showed up when the student was ready type of thing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah, I needed like there was like an eye I didn't know I had that I needed to open because my two eyes kept looking at the same stuff, going like,
yeah.
I'm seeing everything that's here, but I feel like I'm missing something.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, it's not that your eyes haven't seen it, it's that you're looking with the wrong eyes.
makes sense. When you look at your students and all these people that you've touched over the years in terms of teaching, um, do you have a favorite story of how, jujitsu came into somebody's life and it made a profound impact that you'd be willing to share?
Um, no, I mean nothing stands out in particular. I mean, I've certainly had students who um, have expressed how like, different challenges that they were dealing with or sort of perpetual situations that they were dealing with when they started to apply jujitsu principles
Right.
to those situations. They were able to make significant progress in their own lives. But yeah, none of them in particular come to mind.
Okay. Well, uh, some folks are willing to share their jujitsu superhero name. You got a superhero name for us?
I, a superhero name implies that there's
Well,
something
I give
super
you
about
I
what's
give you
going on.
permission to be silly in this regard if you got one that comes to mind, and if not, that's cool too. But some of your buddies have had Doodlebug, Shamu, and I'm assuming that those are not reflective of any true superpowers, but fun metaphors. All right, and if not, maybe next time
No,
yeah,
I'm just Scott. I've given up on trying to be here. I mean,
that's fair enough.
there's no getting away from this thing.
All right. Well, listen, you were very generous to come spend some time with me, and I'm grateful that you did. And maybe you come back again.
Oh, I'd love to.
I'd love
Yeah.
to have the more conversation. All right, brother. Thank you.
Beautiful, man. Thanks.